This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday morning episode of the Mac and Jack Show. I am the Philly sports guy filling in for Mac, along with Hall of Fame boxing writer Jack Hirsch. Morning, Jack. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Pags. I'm sure you're in your usual good mood following the result of the Philadelphia-Philly game.
I tell you, I'm just bubbling with excitement over everything that's happened over the last 2 days.
I mean, you could have worn an Eagle cap this morning. I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to have the Philly cap on after their performance yesterday in losing defensive runs all over the place.
I thought about it, but it didn't go well with the red shirt. So that's if you're going to wear red, you got to wear the Phillies cap. So because I wasn't wearing a Sixers cap, and there's nothing else red.
It's a great time to be a Philly fan. I mean, the Sixers, how they ended their season, not a bad season for a normal team, but for the Sixers, big disappointment. Where have you gone, Philadelphia Flyers? They're like forgotten altogether. No one even be remembered in Philadelphia. Eagles, a lot of hope coming up there to talk, but the Phillies are the current news, and it's frustrating. They're just not kind of working out. Philly's a hotbed as far as coaches being on the hot seat. When you think about it. Yes. Girardi and Doc Rivers. I mean, that's a nice combo. There could be a betting thing, Pags. Will they both be gone within the year? Will they both stay? You could parlay it. One might be gone. The other might stay.
Well, and then you could also follow up that bet with, will the Flyers hire somebody before another coach is fired? So, I mean, that's... all good questions.
Will Jalen Hurts outlast them as QB? You could add that in, have all those parlays. A lot of action.
There's lots of ways that you could go about Philadelphia sports managing and coaching. Who's the first one out? Who's going to be, and who's going to stay? Because as of right now, they said that Doc Rivers is staying, but I don't believe that. And
I feel he's staying. I think he would have been gone by now. They would have moved on from him because enough good coaching candidates out there that it wasn't a case of them holding on to Doc if they couldn't get the one guy who they wanted. I think because they're number viable candidates, I think if they were going to move on from Doc, they will. The only way I see them moving on from Doc, if all of a sudden the GM Daryl Morey's under extreme pressure to fire Doc, meaning that Joel Embiid basically says he's fed up. He doesn't want to come back with the same cast of players. He's sick of the coach. The coach is the key. You can't change the team. You can't give the 76er team a facelift, but you can change coaches because that's just one guy and that can be done. But it hasn't been done yet. I don't think it's happening. I think Doc absolutely is going to be the coach of the Sixers next year.
Well, I would agree with that they would have either fired him already or they may trade him if the trade, if that is a viable situation. I don't know that that's even viable.
Well, trade him? Are you talking about a draft pick or maybe a player? There was some talk of Doc Rivers being traded to the Lakers. How would you feel about a Doc Rivers for Russell Westbrook even-up swap? Coach for player. I can't...
Now, out of all the things that you could have mentioned to me, that's the worst part of that. I mean, you know what? I would probably still do it because I'm so far ahead of ready to have Doc Rivers out of here that I would take on Russell Westbrook. But I think Russell Westbrook is just, right now, he's a cancer in the locker room.
Is he really?
I think he was a cancer to the Lakers.
I can't say that's the case. Listen, with the Lakers, LeBron James is such a dominating personality there's no way Russell Westbrook would have taken over that locker room or really been poison in the locker, because they would have gotten rid of him during the season. If he was really getting on the, really ruffling LeBron James up, they would. I think it's his play on the court. I'm going to play devil's advocate for 1 second, Pax. I've been a big critic of Russell Westbrook, saying wherever he went, the teams never fulfill their potential. They're never as good as they should be. Let me take a different approach, a backwards approach. And I'm going to speak well of Russell Westbrook. When he left OKC, they became actually worse. Okay? When he left the Houston Rockets, they became worse. When he left the Washington Wizards, they actually became worse. So
That's not true.
I could look at, they didn't make the playoffs last year, Washington, but they didn't make it when Russell Westbrook was there for his year.
Yeah, but they didn't. They actually had the exact same record. So it really didn't make a difference. It's just the fact that they stayed exactly the same. They didn't really improve or fall off. Just that everybody in the East got better.
You could make, that's a fair argument, but you could also make the argument you play for positioning, not for records, okay? Because you even look at the NFL, what the best record in football was, I think, 13-4, the Packers last year. But in the AFC, Tennessee had the number 1 seed. They were 12-5. So you kind of play for your record, towards your positioning, not so much the record. But in any event, I mean, there's a lot of turmoil going on, in Philadelphia now, and it happened last night. If a team just isn't winning, if they're not hitting, that's one thing. But when they're playing poor fundamental ball, that's when I think it gets to the fans. Because, I mean, it's one thing a player strikes out, but when you don't hit the cutoff man on the throw, run to the wrong base, things like that, the fans eventually don't tolerate, and it starts really snowballing. And you have to have the right personality, I think, to be in a certain town. And I'm pretty familiar with Joe Girardi from being New York, being a Yankee fan. And he was a good fit for the Yankees. For 10 years, he was the Yankee manager. On balance, he did a very good job. They won 1 World Series. The year he left, they came a game away from going to the World Series. They made the playoffs year after year. I mean, good manager for the Yankees. I mean, he gets a good grade over the 10-year span, but it just hasn't worked out with the Philadelphia Phillies. And quite honestly, Pax, I'm surprised, because when the Phillies signed him, I thought it would be a great move for Philadelphia Philly baseball. And he came in, Girardi, correct me if I'm wrong, when he was Philly manager, with the same fanfare that James Harden came to when he joined the Sixers. There was a buzz, there was excitement, big time baseball. Is it back in Philly? Girardi's going to take them to the promised land. And they've slid backwards. What's going on?
Yeah, and it's, and how many passes are you able to give him is the problem. So the first year he's here, it's a COVID year. So you gotta give him that pass. And then the second year, I feel that he cost his own team 10 wins. That there were 10 losses that specifically went on his head last season. This season, I feel like so far he has cost his team 3 wins, specifically, and I feel that, the one thing that you might be able to attest to is that he's very robotic in the things that he does. And, when I think of somebody who became somewhat of a robot at the wrong time, I think of Jim Fregosi in the 93 World Series, where he just continued to do the moves that he did all season long, thinking that it was going to be enough to get past Toronto. And I think that even in his own head, he knew that bringing in Mitch Williams under the stress that he was under may not have been the best thing in the world for him to do, yet he did it anyways. And ultimately it cost them. I mean, that's you have the only ever walk-off home run in World Series history, to happen under his watch. That being said, Girardi has not even had the opportunity to coach in those big games in Philadelphia because of the mistakes that he is making up to this point. Obviously he can't be on the field, and at a 4-4 tie, a man on first, going to steal second base, JT Realmuto throws the ball out there. It gets through the second baseman, the shortstop, and the center fielder. Goes all the way to the wall. Guy scores from first base. Well, they never recovered from that. And you could almost argue that they still haven't recovered from the ninth inning the night before, where they take the lead. Bryce Harper's having a series. He went from I can't hit the ball in that park to he went 4 for 5 yesterday. So there are definitely a lot of things that are going on, and the truth of the matter is that when you see Joe Girardi at the end, and he's just all very lethargic is the best word I could use when he's getting interviewed in his office after the game. He looks lethargic.
Is he lethargic or beaten up? We were talking another time, and you said you got the impression Girardi's maybe stopped caring. I can't believe a competitor like Joe Girardi stopped caring, but I think sometimes you get beaten up to the point where you get the fight knocked out of you, and you just have no, you retort to someone else. You can't answer them back. You can't fight back. You just have to wait for things to turn around on its own for you to get your mojo back.
Well, you know what? And I'm using the word lethargic in his appearance, not necessarily in the way that he's answering. The way that he answers these questions are very wishy-washy. He doesn't have the answers anymore. It's like I said, that when you hear some of the responses he has, it's almost like he just does not care. He just does not care. And that's frustrating because he's stuck here for another 2.5 more years because he's only halfway through his contract right now. I mean, and around July would be at the halfway point, and it just doesn't look like he has any interest in being in this team. In fact, as I was listening to Sports Talk Radio this morning, they were talking about how even when he's angry, he looks really, he's not angry. They're not able to get any emotion out of him whatsoever, and that's not Philadelphia. Philly wants to see a little bit of fire under somebody. You just lost 2 games in really bad fashion. Show us that you actually care a little bit by getting angry about it. You don't need to flip desks and go Billy Martin on anybody. But you do need to be a little bit more than, well, I'm just giving the guys a break. They're overworked. Everybody in that pitching staff is overworked. I mean, it was just like these guys are making millions and millions of dollars here. And you got, a lot of Philadelphians here who are fighting the same way there is across the country. The unemployment's tough. They are looking to their sports teams for some type of excitement and some type of fire. They're able to get a little bit of that excitement. And then when you have some of the things happen where they're just, as I said, when JT Realmuto threw that ball and it went through everybody, and that's, you turn it off. That's what happens. You turn it off.
When Joe Girardi was in New York, and anyone who coaches and manages in New York, it's a tough market, dealing with the media, very tough. Philadelphia is the same way. That's what people don't realize. It's a difficult market for a coach / manager when you're not doing well and there are high expectations. And that's always been a difficult thing with Joe Girardi. Joe Girardi's always felt, well, I know the game better than them. I've played all these years. I've coached. I've broadcast. I've managed. You're questioning me, and I know more than you. And conversely, someone in the media or a fan, if you watch all the games and you're staying there, that's your classroom. You're learning. You don't think fans are learning? No, I know a lot of fans are absolutely foolish and they're ridiculous in their assessments sometimes, but they're also knowledgeable fans who have a right to question a certain move. And Girardi seems to be answering because he's obligated to. He has to be there at the press conference, so he has to go through it. So it's like torture for him. So he tries to give generic answers, not to show emotion. And certain coaches, managers could get away with it. Look, Bill Belichick is the best in that regard, but it might catch up to him if New England doesn't win this year. They did make the playoffs last year, gave them a little bit of a reprieve. But when you're winning and you're so successful the way a Bill Parcells was, you can give it back to the media in a certain sense. And when Joe Girardi was with the Yankees, they never really had a downtime where their team was struggling as badly as this Philly team was. So he didn't have to, and his sensitivities didn't really come to the surface. So I think Girardi's basically just giving himself a self-inflicted, and this is made up, dull pill to make him dull. Just answer the question. Get the conference over with the media. He hates doing it, and he's already conditioned himself not to show any emotion, not to get mad. And but knowing Joe Girardi, I can't believe for 1 second he truly doesn't care. But the worst thing that could happen to a coach, a manager, you get beaten up, and you're truly down on yourself. It's going to wear off on the team. Who's going to pick the rest of the team up? They have to see you being enthusiastic, in a good mood. And maybe it comes from the ownership. Maybe they should be communicating with Joe Girardi, Marcus. I'll tell you, if I were the Philly owner, I'd have Joe Girardi in my office. I'd say, chill out, Joe. You got a beautiful family. Enjoy life. Enjoy the games. If we don't win, it's okay. As long as you're out there trying. Don't worry we lose some games. I don't give a darn. Just go out there, have fun. It'll turn around in like 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. Chill out. You're my guy. I want you just to enjoy your darn life here. Loosen Joe up a bit. Maybe there's no one to loosen him up. Maybe he needs a talking to, the way players need a talking to pick themselves up. Who the heck is picking up Joe Girardi, Pax? It's certainly not you. The leader.
You're right. It is definitely not me.
You're not picking him up. He hears this stuff. He hears talk radio. He hears the buzz. It has to affect him. The man is beaten up at this point.
Well, and I feel that some of it's deserved. And the one thing that I can agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think the biggest difference between coaching or managing in New York in comparison to coaching and managing in Philadelphia is that New York is so big that and you have so many different sports teams there that you could get lost in the shuffle. That if the Yankees aren't doing well, that if the Mets are doing well instead of the Yankees, more coverage goes to the Mets instead of the Yankees. Now, of course, the Yankees are always going to get their coverage because the Yankees are the big team in New York. But, there again, it's, then they could talk about the Giants or the Jets or the Rangers or the Islanders or the Brooklyn Nets, and there's or the Knicks. There's so many other teams and so much other sports happening in New York that you can get brushed under the rug for a minute if you're having a little bit of a downturn. In Philadelphia, that cannot happen. because we don't have all the teams. There is no place to hide. And when you start getting beat up, the media gets worse, because it's not just the media. Because the media, the media in Philadelphia, I think, are softer than what we think. It's the fans. It is sports talk radio that, we have one of every team, but we have two, possibly three sports talk radio, stations in the city. We have, I would go into the thousands of people doing sports podcasting in this city. Not that they don't have the same thing happening in New York, but I just feel like that there is just nowhere to hide. And when a narrative starts, and this narrative has been around for a minute when it comes to Joe Girardi, I've been saying this for over a year myself. I feel that once he started to not care, it showed. And personally, Joe Girardi might be a great guy. I have no, I can distinguish between him personally and him as the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies.
By all accounts, he's a very good man, a good human being.
Yeah, so I have no problems with him on a personal level. That being said, I do have issue when it comes to coaching or managing my teams, and I want a very specific thing from my coach and my managers. I want them to be able to fire up my team when they need to. I want them to have the same type of energy I put into these games. I put a lot of energy into these games. When I go to a game, that I'm there. I'm not quiet. I like to be exciting. I want to do whatever I can to try to push these guys to do the best that they can. And I feel like that's what a manager and a coach has to do sometimes. Like at one point, we said a couple of weeks ago, Doc Rivers was looking at his team. He's like, don't you guys want to do it? He's trying to motivate his guys, and they just weren't responding. And that was the problem I ran into with Doc first and foremost, plus the fact that he just did not have a way of being able to come up with a better plan. That he was doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And that may have been because he didn't really have another plan in place, because you can only really implement one plan the moment you have Harden in there. And I can maybe give him give him this season to say, okay, yes, you needed to come up with a better plan. You've come up with that better plan. I don't know that Girardi's got a better plan. I think Girardi is just done.
I think, New York and Philadelphia, a lot more than you're letting on, at least from listening to what you're saying now, Pags, because I think in both cities, there's one story that has to take hold. And if there's not a story, the media is going to make one, create one. Philadelphia, it goes one at a time. It bounces around. It was the Ben Simmons situation. We move on from that. Then it's Jalen Hurts. Is he going to be their quarterback? Then it's James Harden. Should he get a max deal? Then it's Doc Rivers. Should he get fired? Now it's Joe Girardi. It's a merry-go-round. It's going to pass from Joe Girardi to the next guy. In New York, it's like Kyrie Irving. Then Josh Donaldson's the story, but that's going to be coming to an end very soon. Then what's the next story going to be in New York sports? I'm not sure, but something's going to come up. Maybe it's going to be, should the Mets extend Jason DeGrom when he comes back this summer because he's been injured? He's going to be a free agent, and they're going to get on that a while. And then the Aaron Judge contract is going to come up again. Something always has to take hold. And it just so happens that right now, Joe Girardi's in the eye of the storm. But, that's not going to last that long. It's going to resolve itself two ways, Pags. Either he's going to get fired / quit, or the Phillies are going to turn it around. Or it's possible the season will just play itself out. But if the Phillies don't make the playoffs this year, I think Girardi's going to be gone at the end of the season. They'll buy him out, or he'll quit, or he'll get fired, or whatever. Or the Phillies are going to make the playoffs, and Girardi's going to be the Philly manager for years to come. In other words, we don't know how it's going to play out, but I don't see Joe Girardi being on the verge of being fired. I think he just has a little too much clout, a little too much of a reputation, and ownership owns him all that money. And as you well know, Pags, when ownership owns a coach a lot of money, a manager, they don't fire him so quickly. If this was Girardi's last year and they just had to eat this year's contract, maybe. But they have 2 years after this. So they don't want to let go of a guy so quick and basically pay him for nothing.
Well, no, and I can believe that. And that's what the thought is right now, is that are they going to, honor his contract and,
unless
so
you're
on and
Steve
so forth.
Cohen. They owned Robinson Cano a couple of seasons of salary, and Steve Cohen said, do what's best for the team. If you want to move on from him, I'll just pay him the money. And that was a lot of money. Something like, like about $50 million approximately or thereabouts.
Well, you know what? And that's a lot of money. I mean, since the Eagles did it with Carson Wentz, I feel like you needed that first team to take the step. And of course, it was a Philadelphia team that jumped that way. And, there was some talk on Twitter yesterday about some of the things that happened during that time, on Carson Wentz leaving Philadelphia and how he did not want to leave Philadelphia. And then ultimately, they said the story that came out on Twitter was a doozy. I'm not sure how much I believe in it, but ultimately it was stated, or at least said from a friend of a friend or whatever, was that there was an argument between him and Howie Roseman, and that Carson Wentz did not have to go through concussion protocol during that Seattle game because they didn't require it. And he kept telling on himself. And because he kept telling on himself that, then they had to put him through the concussion protocol, and that was the argument, that Howie was, having an argument with him as he was throwing up from the concussion in the first place. I was like, it seems a little funny to me, but whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know.
But Pat, speaking of former Eagle quarterbacks, what slipped under the radar is the Indianapolis Colts signing Nick Foles. Okay, he's going to be their backup quarterback to Matt Ryan in Indianapolis. It makes it interesting. Frank Reich, the Indianapolis coach, as you well know, was the Eagle offensive coordinator when they won the Super Bowl. When Wentz was the starter, went down with an injury, Nick Foles replaced him, became a Super Bowl hero. But when Carson Wentz was with Frank Reich in Indianapolis, Nick Foles was available to be gotten as a backup, and Frank Reich didn't get Nick Foles because the perception was that won't be good for Carson's confidence, that Nick Foles, who replaced him, is now, a step behind him, looking over his shoulder in Indianapolis. But as soon as Carson Wentz leaves Indianapolis, why is he all of a sudden viable for Frank Reich to bring to Indianapolis? Who and Frank Reich, of course, coached both guys.
Right. Well, and I think that, honestly, that Nick Foles is a better fit for Frank Reich's style than Carson Wentz was. Although Carson Wentz did go 11-2 with Frank Reich coaching him, during that year, during that 2017
run. He had a great
run.
season, that Super Bowl. Yeah, give Carson Wentz his due. He was
absolutely
a quarterback.
We would not have been able to get to where we were without him playing as well as he did. And I felt afterwards, so when it came to 2018, and Carson Wentz was doing everything he could to get back onto the field, the problem is that when you watch your team win the Super Bowl without you, you are always throwing every pass like it's winning the Super Bowl. And that's what I felt was the problem. I felt that he was trying to win the Super Bowl with every pass. And, the team had already won the Super Bowl. So it wasn't computing. So they did what they were doing, and then they started to not do as well. He wound up breaking his back, and then Nick Foles comes in and really was an Alshon Jeffries pass, miss away from going back to the conference championship against the Rams, whose number we had. We were beating the Rams all the time back then. So, it's interesting to kind of see now that they're reunited 4 years after the fact now. So obviously, Nick Foles isn't going to have the chance to play the way, he's going to back up Matty Ice. And, Matty Ice is getting older, so it's possible he's going to get hurt. But Nick Foles is no youngin anymore either. I mean, he's about 32 years old.
No, Nick Foles, I'm sure, is there to be a backup because he'll know Frank Reich's system, what Frank Reich wants to do. And he's a dependable backup. I mean, you need a guy as a good fill-in as a backup. You'd rather have an experienced guy like Nick Foles if you have a contending team than a rookie like, let's say, Malik Willis with Tennessee. Tennessee's a contender, to that. But the difference in Tennessee had the best record in the AFC last year. They're more than just a contender. But if Ryan Tannehill goes down, I mean, who would you rather have come in, at least in the short term for that season, a Malik Willis or Nick Foles? One guy's got better long-range potential, but another guy's a better short-term fix. And when you have a contender, you really need the short-term fix.
Right. Well, we're going to do a little bit of a segue to hockey, where we did not think Carter was going to be coming on, but he is our hockey guru from the Mac and Jack show. Carter is on our show talking about NHL playoffs. What's up, Carter? Are you there?
Good morning, guys. What's going on?
There we are. Perfect.
Oh,
Carter,
can you guys hear me?
I can now. We can now. Yes.
Max, I don't know whether you're aware. Carter's a big Islander fan, and I'm actually an Islander fan myself too. And we were, both a little disappointed. Carter more so than me. The Islanders didn't quite have the season they had, even though I expect a bounce back next year. But their rivalries in New York, it's not like you cheer for each team. So in a way, Carter, as a fan, not as an analyst, this has to be your worst nightmare to see the Rangers make a playoff run. As a fan, as an analyst, you give them full credit, I know.
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely been good throughout the course of the postseason so far. I remember talking to a few of my friends about it, and I said, the Rangers are going to go as far as Igor Shesterkin can take them, right? So, Igor's definitely been good so far. I mean, it's looked like he's really embraced the spotlight of playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And, if I'm Carolina right now, I mean, we've only scored 2 goals in our last 2 games or something like that, right? You're going back home now. You really got to embrace that home crowd, especially considering the troubles that the Carolinas had on the road so far. It's really been something.
And I got to ask, because this is the first time I've spoken to you since this all went down. Barry Trotz's getting fired. Well, first off, what's your opinion?
I can't say I was happy with it. It caught a lot of the fan base off guard, and it definitely caught everybody for a loop, considering Lou Lamoriello said he wanted a new voice in the locker room, and basically turned around and hired, his longtime associate coach in Lane Lambert. So, I've said this to a lot of people before that, there's a lot more that goes into it than just whoever was behind the bench. This team would have needed upgrades, on their roster based on anything else. So, personally, I want to see what they do in the draft and free agency before I truly evaluate the offseason. But, Lane Lambert, he's someone who knows Barry Trotz's system. He's someone who, obviously has a little bit of coaching experience before when Barry Trotz had to take a leave of absence this year and Lane Lambert stepped up behind the bench. So, he knows what it takes to get this group, rallied together. And, it'll be interesting to see what happens in his first full year as an NHL head coach.
Carter, do you think anything maybe went on behind the scenes, like Lou Lamoriello maybe wanted the Islanders to play a certain style, and Barry Trotz, who's pretty set in his way, said, no, this is the way we're going to do it? And maybe it was that type of conflict, because that happens in sports all the time. The GM wants the coach to do a certain thing. The coach does his own thing. There's friction, and the GM, at the end of the day, has the power, so he could move on from the coach in most cases. Do you think that could have been the situation here? Because he hired Barry Trotz as assistant. He didn't go outside the organization to bring in a new face. So maybe that's a little bit revealing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's possible with the way Lou Lamoriello is. Everybody knows that, he wants things done his way. And, I think one of the, it hasn't been confirmed just yet, but one of the theories that's kind of going around the fan base right now is that essentially, the keys would have been handed over to Lane Lambert at one point or another anyway, because, Trotz has been very open in saying that Lane Lambert would make a very good head coach at the NHL level, and I'm sure he would have gotten other offers for different openings this offseason. So, I'm wondering if any of that kind of sped up the process a little bit in terms of not wanting Lane Lambert to go anywhere and knowing that he would get offers. Maybe they just decided to hand him the keys a little earlier than they would have expected to. Another thing that's been going around is maybe Barry Trotz has kind of been burnt out due to everything to do with COVID and stuff like that. It's definitely possible that happened too. It happened with Paul Maurice in Winnipeg. So, I don't know. I mean, in reality, I guess we'll never truly know what happened, considering Lou Lamoriello likes to keep everything, very under wraps. But, those are kind of the two more, I guess, widespread theories about what happened this offseason.
That being said, now obviously the Flyers are looking for a coach. And, of course, the moment that the Islanders let go of Trotz, I was on that train. I'm like, hey, I would love to have him here. At least, he took Washington, to a Stanley Cup. Then he took the Islanders to the doorstep and ran into the buzzsaw that is still, Tampa Bay, and we'll get to them in a minute. Do you see Trotz being a fit in Philadelphia?
I feel like that'd be a question that you could answer more than me, but I don't know. I mean, if I'm Philly, I'm definitely looking at what he did specifically with the Islanders, knowing that, Philadelphia, granted they didn't have quite the season that they were expecting to this year, but I look at the Flyers roster and I see a lot more talent than, a lot more pure talent anyway than on the Islanders roster, right? So, if I'm a Philly fan, I'd be very intrigued in hiring a guy like Trotz, especially like you said, with the championship pedigree that he has and the ability to get a lot out of teams that, might not be looked at as a true contender on paper, if that makes sense. So, I don't know. I mean, personally, I still think he'd be a really good fit in Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg is kind of where the Islanders were when Barry Trotz came in. They were kind of lost defensively. They just really cared about offense more than anything else. And if there's one thing that Trotz brings, it's defensive accountability and structure. So, if I had to pick two teams at the top of the list, I'd say Winnipeg and Philly are right there.
Carter, did you? Maybe I misheard. Did you say Philly's roster was better than the Islanders, as good as the Islanders?
I think Philly's roster is better than the Islanders right now.
How could the Flyers have been that bad, though, if their roster was? I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, but the Flyers were dreadful this past season. I mean, what was the reason?
Again, that might be a question for Pags to answer, not really myself, but
Pat stopped following the Flyers at a certain point in the year.
That's not true. That's not true. I followed them. I just wasn't real happy with them. And I feel like that they fired Alain Vigneault way early, way too early, in fact. They had a downturn, and they did not wait for him to catch back up again, and they immediately pulled the plug. And I feel that they floundered ever since then. That Mike Yeo was not a good person to have in place. I don't think that the team responded to him whatsoever, and they floundered from there on out. So let's getting away from the losing teams. Let's go back to winning teams. So I said again at the beginning of this season, as I did the beginning of last season, that I thought that this was still Tampa's cup to lose. And after a presidential season that the Florida Panthers had, they still couldn't get past Vasilevsky, or however you want to say his name. It frustrates me that he's on that Tampa Bay team, because he's going to carry them to another cup run again. And, we have the Rangers against Carolina, and that's turning into a really good series, although I still think Carolina comes out in game 7 on that. But I think it does go to 7 games. On the other side, a little bit of a surprise with the Oilers, do you think? And obviously the Avalanche were, maybe finally getting that monkey off of their back. What are your thoughts on both of them? On both the Western Conference, series?
I'll start out with Edmonton, Calgary, I guess, because I think that's been the most wild of the the second round series so far. I'm gonna be honest. I have Calgary in my final in my bracket, so I'm not exactly a happy camper right now. But I think the only reason Edmonton's as good as they are right now, I mean, it's not really a secret. It's Connor McDavid is just having an absolutely outstanding postseason. He's got 25 points in 7 or 8 games or something like that, probably more than that. But
it's 11 games.
Yeah, he's been on another level for Edmonton, and it's I don't even know what to say right now. It's just Calgary just has no way to shut him down, and granted Calgary's they've been decent defensively over the course of the season, but another thing too is just Jacob Markstrom has just not been anywhere as good as he was in the first round. I mean, he's faltered, and it's definitely shown for Calgary. So it's kind of my thoughts on that. St. Louis, Colorado turned into a pretty good series so far. Got a sting for Colorado to have a 3-0 lead in last night's game and still find a way to lose in overtime. So it's going to be tough for them on the road now. St. Louis is they've been good at home over the course of the postseason. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that, but I could definitely see this one going 7 games.
Yeah. What happened with the Panthers against the Lightning? They just couldn't score. And being in Florida during the winter, I followed them. I had easy access to their games on TV, and they were really, really good team all year. They created such a buzz in Florida too. I mean, losing to the Lightning would have been one thing had they gone down in 7 games and lost, some 4-3 games. But they just couldn't put the puck in the net. It was astounding to see how they had regressed.
Yeah, it was something that I don't think anybody was expecting. Just they got shut down by playoff Vasilevsky. That's it. They scored 3 times in 4 games, and if I'm looking at one loss in particular, I'm looking at game 2 when they got scored on with 1 second left in regulation. I think
that was a miscue behind the net. Yeah.
I think that deflated them more than a lot of people think. And, going out on the road down 0-2, I don't think it was easy to get back into that playoff mindset. And they couldn't do it. So thankfully I have Tampa Calgary in my final, so my bracket's still kind of alive, I guess. But if there's one thing I've learned over the course of the 2 postseasons, that you don't bet on the you don't bet against the defending champs. So
can Tampa match the Islanders' run of 4 cups in a row that the Islanders did in the early 80s?
I'm not even trying to be biased when I say this. I think that's a tall task to ask, especially in the salary cap era. You have pieces going out the door every single day, and the fact that Tampa's still been able to hit on some of these low low end players like Ross Colton, Corey Perry, Belmar, Nick Paul. You could go down the list. I mean, every single depth piece that they've seemed to acquire, it's been a home run. Even throw a guy like Brandon Hagel on that list. So, I think let's try and focus on three first. But
well, you make
with
a great point, Carter. You make a great point. Salary cap era, and I wasn't thinking of that. So, 3 cups in a row by Tampa Bay, prorating about as good as the Islanders winning 4 in a row, basically the equivalent if they win it this year. Because with the salary cap, it's so hard to keep a team together, unlike years ago.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think, no team's obviously won 3 straight cups in the salary cap era. The only team that's come close was Pittsburgh a few years ago. So, you had LA who won 2 in 3 years. You had Chicago who won 2 in 4. I think this would be the first true dynasty in the salary cap era. And, I think a lot of people have to get ready for it because I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, all because they take advantage of a rule that they voted against. They were the only team to vote against, and then they take advantage of that rule very well, better than any other team in the NHL, where they could just sit guys and work the salary cap the way they want to just get ready for the playoffs. And it's kudos to them. Like I said, I felt that this whole year it didn't matter where, if they made it to the playoffs, they were going to win the cup. And that they're just too strong of a team, and they're made for playoff hockey. And
they got a couple of rounds to go, guys. Don't start handing them the 3rd cup, even though I know I'm the one that initiated this conversation.
Well,
they've got a ways to go. It's going to be tough for the
I think they handle either the Rangers or that's been a little bit of a chippy series. I'm surprised that. It's like the end of the games of those, like they're not ready to finish playing, that they're fighting after the end of each one of these games. And that's going to take a toll because, there's going to be a little bit of rust because Tampa is going to have waited so long to get started in this series. But I think that as long as their goalie remains as hot as he is, that there's no chance. There's no chance from either one of those teams. And it may take a Connor McDavid that specifically, and I had nothing against anybody from the Avalanche because I'm sure that they have some scorers on that team as well. But it's going to take a Connor McDavid type effort to be able to start to put goals past him. And that, I think, is going to wind up being the series to watch if Edmonton can get past whoever they have to face, whether they face Colorado or St. Louis. Are they going to be able to get past them? And, of course, they still got to win the 4th game yet against Calgary. But I think Calgary's deflated right now.
Yeah, they definitely look deflated right now. If I had to guess, I think they'd be a little more energized going home tonight for Game 5. But it definitely doesn't look good for Calgary right now.
Yeah, and that's it's a shame because I'm a big fan of Johnny Hockey, and he's been tied back to the Flyers, for the last 3 years. I think he actually does become a free agent this year. So I'm not 100% certain, but I'd love to see him in the orange and black here. I feel like the Flyers are in desperate need of a goal scorer, a real goal scorer. And I think that if he was playing for his favorite team growing up, that some of those dreams would start to become reality, and he would be not necessarily a savior of this franchise, but somebody who could come in here and really spark them in a way that not anybody has sparked them in a long time.
I guess it's definitely possible. I don't see him as really a goal scorer. I see him more as a playmaker, I guess. But I definitely think playing with the right offensive pieces, I think you can definitely get the most out of him wherever he goes. So Philadelphia playing with Couturier on that first line, it would be that'd be a hell of a duo, that's for sure.
And one last thing before we send you out of here, Carter. Obviously, Claude Giroux He's got a lot of Philadelphia ties. Went to Florida. There were some thoughts on the fact that he forced Philadelphia to trade him to Florida specifically, and that there was conversation after the fact that he wanted to come back to Philly, that this was just for rental and that he was going to come back. What are your thoughts on the fact that, one, he may wind up back in Philly, or, who knows? I'm not a big fan of our general manager. I feel like that, amongst everything else, that once the Wild got rid of him, they wound up getting better. So I'm not really excited about this GM. But what do you think the prospects are that he winds up back in Philadelphia, or if he's not in Philadelphia, where else he may go?
Well, I think the big thing for Giroux is I have a feeling that at this point in his career, it's really about winning, than anything else. And, with Philadelphia, I mean, do you think this is kind of like a one and done type thing where this was kind of a blip in the radar and maybe next year they'll be back to contending? Or at this point, do you think they'll maybe be entering a rebuild? I'm going to be honest. I really don't know. I know there have been rumors going around that Philadelphia doesn't want to rebuild. They've called it an aggressive retool more than anything else. So, I don't know if I see a guy like Giroux wanting to go through that, especially in his, mid to late 30s at this point. But at the same time, I mean, obviously he's played in Philadelphia for a very long time and, he's familiar with the organization. The fans love him. So, I could definitely see him returning at, maybe a bit of a discounted price, but I kind of want to get, your thoughts on that more than anything else.
I can't see him returning to the Flyers unless he knows his career's weeks away from ending and he just wants to end it as a Flyer, retire as a Flyer. That's the only way. I mean, once you go to a contending team like the Panthers, you get used to your new teammates. You want to contend for a cup, and going back to the Flyers, he's not contending for a cup next year. I just can't see it.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel. Like, I don't know that the Flyers are going to be cup contenders over the course of a season. I don't know if they're going to even be able to improve enough. See, that's where I feel like that the coach and the coaching style is going to make the biggest difference. So if, Trotz is a very defensive style, and the one thing that the Flyers have had the biggest issue with over the last 2 seasons has been defensively, besides the special teams. The special teams have just
You're
been
making
absolutely
Trotz
horrendous.
the Flyer coach already? Come on,
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see that. Let
me tell you what the most optimistic thing about Trotz maybe becoming the next Flyer coach. He would take that job over the Winnipeg job, I think, at a snap of the finger, because he coached at Washington, New York, and Philly's in close proximity. So it's a question of lifestyle. He's now used to being on the East Coast. So to have that jolt to live in Winnipeg and, to settle there. So I would see him taking the Flyer job over the job in Winnipeg.
Plus, he knows this. He knows this team very intimately. He knows the Flyers really well. I've watched him outcoach, Elaine and, Mike Yeo really strongly. The Islanders have had our number since he's gotten there. And then also Washington. We actually did better against Washington than we did against the Islanders. I mean, I think he, short of that one playoff series, we didn't win a game against the Islanders for 2 regular seasons, while he was the coach. And then, of course, this season wasn't necessarily the best. I think we did win a game or 2 here this season. But I have always been a fan of Barry Trotz. I think that he would be a great coach. I feel like that he is enough of not a player's coach, that he is really tough on his players. And I think that that's what they need right now. The veteran leadership on this Flyers team isn't very strong. And I feel that, although Giroux was like a quiet captain, I think Couturier is going to follow in that lead if they choose to make him the captain. But I feel that they need some fire under them. And I thought Elaine gave him a little bit of fire, but once they got rid of him too early, I thought that was where the Flyers' downfall really began, and that they just weren't going to be able to recover from that.
Well, I just want to ask Carter, when Washington moved on from Trotz after he won the Cup, reportedly it was because Trotz's contractual demands they didn't want to meet. I get the feeling it had to be more than just money. You know, you win a Stanley Cup, there should be such goodwill that something would be worked out on both sides. What did you perceive as the story there?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agreed with you that, if anything, there had to have been some sort of disagreement or falling out between Trotz and Capitals management that, fresh off a Stanley Cup championship, you hit the open market and you go to a team that at the time hadn't made the playoffs 2 years before that and only won, I think, one playoff series in the last 23 years or 25 years or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with the mindset that, Capitals management and Barry Trotz weren't on the same page. And it just so happened to work out that, Trotz came to Long Island and completely changed the course of the franchise for the next, couple of seasons. So I think, regardless of where it ends up, Islander fans are very, we're sad to see Trotz go, but we'll openly welcome him back when when he returns.
Yeah, they'll send something up there and say, "Hey, look at the memories we have with him."
Lou Lamoriello might not allow a tribute to be played on the scoreboard, so.
Yeah, I think Lou's getting a little old. He's long in the tooth right now, and that's. I feel that's some of the problem that.
In fairness to Lou Lamoriello, guys, his history shows when he's replaced coaches, more often than not, it's worked out. I mean, it happened 3 Stanley Cup winning coaches with the Devils he replaced, and it always seems to work out most of the time with the next guy. Am I wrong with making that statement?
Yeah, I guess not. I mean, like I said before, though, this this Islander team, I don't think they can contend with the roster they have on paper right now. There has to be improvements, specifically on the defensive end. I wasn't very happy with the way their defensive core played last year. So, if they want to contend, they have to, make some moves, and it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially since Lou Lamoriello labeled a lot of the moves that he would make as hockey trades more than anything else. So, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, is he an active player in the free agent market, or is he going to build, excuse me, is he going to build this team more through the draft and, kind of trading more than anything else? So we'll see.
Well, definitely a lot more to look forward to. We still have about another 3 weeks to a month left of hockey, depending on how these next couple series go. So I'm sure we will all look forward to seeing you next Friday or next Thursday. Come on with either myself or Mac, depending on hopefully Mac is back here with you, and I'll be paying close attention because I have a feeling the next series is going to be really interesting. These conference finals is going to be a lot of fun to watch, just in general. I'm hoping that the best series isn't the way that the Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames, the battle for Alberta. I hope that actually can carry over with either St. Louis or Colorado. But as always, great work, Carter. Thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate it and letting us know everything there is to know about the NHL.
Good job, Carter.
All right, guys. Hoping we don't see a Tampa Ranger matchup, considering that would be like my worst nightmare. But we'll see. we'll see.
There you go. Right, well, thanks, Carter. Have a good one.
You too.
All right. We're going to go right to a quick break. And once we come back, we're going to have Eric Bellier, who is, let me make sure that I get this right. He is media broadcaster and media relations at the Tri-City Valley Cats, which is a minor league team. I'm assuming, is that in New York or Connecticut? Or I'm sure he'll let us know. So I've never heard of this team before. But I'd be interested to hear what he's got to say, because I'm interested in all minor league teams. I know that Philadelphia has all their minor leagues close by here, and I don't get a chance to get up there as much as possible. So we'll be right back after these commercial messages.
My baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, it's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that?
There are times when only an ice-cold beer will do. And there are times, like this one, when it's got to be Schaefer. Schaefer, like any fine beer, tastes wonderful in that first cold glass. But, and this is what really sets Schaefer apart, the pleasure of this beer doesn't fade after one glass or two. Even after your thirst is gone, the pleasure of ice-cold Schaefer keeps coming on. Your last one is every bit as rewarding as your first. That's why
Schaefer is the one beer to have when you're having more than one.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
Anyone else?
My name is David, and in 8 years, I'll be an alcoholic.
Hi, David.
I'll start drinking in middle school, just at parties. But my parents won't start talking to me about it till high school. And by then, I'll already be in some trouble.
Kids who drink before age 15 are 5 times more likely to have alcohol problems when they're adults.
The thing is, my parents won't even see it coming.
So start talking.
Who's next?
Before they start drinking.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, get us any.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or a Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
When you drive to Wendy's and order a single, you get more beef than the Whopper or the Big Mac. At Wendy's, you never have to ask, where's the beef?
And we are back. So, yeah, I love watching those old commercials. They're always interesting. I got a couple of new old ones that we're going to show on this next go around too. So hopefully we'll get to them. But first off, let's bring on
old stuff of classics.
Yeah, yeah. It's like when you go look up at some of those old commercials, they usually put them all together. So trying to find them individually is a little bit of fun. But let's bring on Eric Bellier. Like I said, Eric is the broadcaster and media relations for the Tri-City Valley Cats. Welcome, Eric. How are you?
Thank you, guys. Jack, how are you?
Hey, hi, Eric. I actually know Eric comes from a sports background. I know Eric's mom, and she was affiliated with the Madison Square Garden boxing department. So she's been in the sport of boxing. So Eric, he's had a role model growing up for sure.
Yeah, she's the best of the best. And I meet people like Jack through her. So it's pretty awesome.
Oh, nice. So first off, give us a little bit of insight on who the Tri-Valley Cats are.
So the Tri-City Valley Cats are in Troy, New York. Tri-City, their Capital Regions baseball team. We were with the Astros prior to the condensation of the minor league baseball system. We were the low A affiliate. We played in the New York Penn League. That's the same league as like the Brooklyn Cyclones and the Staten Island Yankees that were in that league for a while. And then once Manfred cut a lot of the teams and they tried to regionalize everything, like for example, all the Mets minor league teams now are all in the state of New York. And the Yankees are within northern Pennsylvania, North Jersey, and New York, outside of the low A teams that aren't going to be here anytime soon. So once that happened, we joined the league called the Frontier League. And the Frontier League is an independent baseball league, similar to the Atlantic League. That's the highest level of unaffiliated baseball that guys will go to get signed. So like we have guys that have played in a couple hundred games in the major leagues, and we had guys that played just a year in affiliated ball or just came to this league out of college. It's fun because you get guys from all walks of life. So like, for example, we have Jay Bell's son on our team. Brantley Bell played second base for the Reds for a while. And then we just signed Kumar Rocker, who was a Mets first round draft pick last year. And that whole thing where he didn't sign with the team, with the Mets, due to whatever that was. So Kumar's pitching with us till the next draft. And it's an exciting time, and working in baseball is a dream come true for me. And I think this is a good launching off point for myself. So that's a little bit about Tri-City.
How does a Frontier League differ from, let's say, the independent league where, let's say, the Long Island Ducks are going to play?
So they don't necessarily differ in a sense. That we're a league, the Frontier League, the Atlantic League. There's a couple different leagues that are non-affiliated with organization-wise, but the league is considered a Major League Baseball partner league. So in the Atlantic League last year, they were trying things like bigger bases. They moved the mound back a foot for a certain amount of time. They test out rules changes in all these leagues. That's really the only difference between like the Atlantic League, where the Ducks play, like you said, Jack, and where we play. It's just rule stuff. So like, for example, we have a rule this year. You play the game won't go past the 11th inning, basically. The 10th inning's played like the major leagues do. They start with a runner on second base and all that stuff. And then the 11th inning, the managers come out and meet at home plate, and it's what we call sudden death baseball.
Oh, yeah.
And the home manager gets to pick whether they're going to be in the field or they're going to hit. And they then, if the hitting team gets a run, they win. If the team in the field gets 3 outs, they win. We actually just played that for the first time last night against a team from Pennsylvania, and we're away. So the home team picked to play the field, and we actually walked them off on their own field, which is kind of a weird thing. But we ended up hitting a walk-off single on the road.
Pags, that's an awesome rule for your Philadelphia Phillies. I'm sure they grab the bats. They wouldn't rely on their bullpen and sudden death.
After what I saw last night, I don't think they're playing any defense anytime soon.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree that I like that. They should, institute that for every inning.
I like that. Second death. Yeah.
But that's an interesting rule. I assume that I don't know if baseball's even thought about something like that. The purists would absolutely, pull every hair they had out.
I agree with you. And that's the thing. It's like with us being partnered with Major League Baseball, this is their testing grounds. So, like, for example, in 2023, in the major leagues, they're making the bases like an inch or two bigger to avoid collisions and safety and things like that, I guess. And that started with them working with the Atlantic League the last couple of years and playing with bigger bases and seeing how that worked and if players liked it and things like that. Because the Atlantic League, and Jack, you know this, you'll probably know this better than Pags, is that with the Atlantic League, like anybody that has a name that is trying to get back into Major League Baseball has played there. My first baseball game back in 2001 was the Long Island Ducks against the Newark Bears, and the Newark Bears had the Canseco brothers and Ricky Henderson.
Wow.
So it's like there's names that play in this league. The Ducks have had, in particular, Edgardo Alfonso, so many names I can go down over time that, like, this is legit baseball. And just because they're not affiliated doesn't mean it's not a high level of baseball. And it's a very, very
holding on to a dream by going back and just want to show they can do an organized ball.
To an extent, yeah, but also too, like, if you think about it, and Pag, you'll actually like this. Our manager's Pete Incaviglia.
I see. Now that is I like that.
Yeah, Inky's our manager, and he's the man. And his nephew Thomas is actually our bench coach and third base coach. But Pete was saying, we had a press conference when we signed Kumar on Saturday, I want to say, and he said, this signing is going to bring guys to the ball, bring scouts to the ballpark, not to just get some sort of knowledge on what Kumar is, but we have a really good team. I mean, one of our relievers was in AAA 2 years ago, like for a consistent amount of time. And then go ahead.
And what makes somebody? Because obviously, when you're just an affiliate, league, you don't have a designation on AA or AAA. So you get to choose. You get to choose these players almost like free agents in general. So and anybody getting signed off of these teams would also get signed as a free agent. They and then get thrown back into the system, into their system. Are there any players that will get signed by teams and left on your team without getting put into their system?
Yeah. So the way it works is that the contract is purchased from us to the major league organization. So, for example, we had a pitcher last year, Troy Cruz, who is back with us again, actually. And halfway through the year, the Miami Marlins wanted him and they liked him, and he came and the Marlins scouted him and they purchased his contract from us, and he pitched in AA for the rest of the season and then ended up not signing anywhere. So he came back and was pitching for us and just threw 5 innings of 2-hit ball the other day. So, it's like it's a jumping off point for a lot of guys. So, like, this could be the ceiling for some guys, and this could be just the start for people. For example, and the example that I use, and I think, Jack, you'll know this well because he was a Duck, Rich Hill, who is still pitching. He's with the Red Sox again now. He was Met last year, was with the Dodgers for a while, Oakland. He was a Long Island Duck for most of the year, I believe, in 2011, and was pitching in the big leagues starting in 2012, and then hasn't left since. So, it's an example that these leagues are a very good jumping off point. And in a way, it's like the minor leagues, it's development.
You mentioned a guy like Rich Hill, but take any player take a player at Tri-Valley, what's the max they would stay with the team? Because ultimately, either you jump up or you jump down, or you fall down. You don't stay with the team that long. So you have a big turnover, especially being in charge of media relations.
Yeah, so with us, we kind of got lucky because we had a lot of guys come back. There's guys that we got fresh out of college. Like we have a guy from Oklahoma State. His name's Carson Mccusker. He's 6'8". He's huge and he's really good. But with the condensation of the minor leagues from last year, it's put guys in a position where they're taking this route to then leave from there at one point or another. The league is also built in a way where you can't have like a certain amount. We can only have 4 what are considered veterans, and it goes by service time and affiliated service time, major league service time. So like we have a couple guys that have like a couple hundred games under the belt in the big leagues. You're only allowed to have 4 of them. So there's guys like we have a tryout process. There's a league that we partner with in the winter called the California Winter League. And then we do a Frontier League draft down there from the guys that tried out and went to the camp and played in the games. So it's a turnover. We've been playing for 2 weeks, and I started 2 weeks ago, and we've had 30 roster moves already. So it's like it's a lot. It's a lot.
Is it a stopover for guys rehabbing, for a couple of weeks where that they're going to be there for a cup of coffee and then they're going to be out? Because I'm already targeting when Jacob deGrom is going to be pitching for the Cyclones. I want to catch that game.
Yeah, so
who knows when it's going to be?
Right. So for us, we're not affiliated with a organization. So we were with the Astros prior to the consolidation of the minor league system. But now it's like it's a league you sign with the team and you're playing in the Frontier League. It gives players, in my opinion, the opportunity that they weren't going to get to play every day if they were to sign an affiliated ball, to play every day and prove that they should play every day at a higher level. And that's what makes it so interesting with Kumar Rocker, is that the whole situation with him with the Mets, he now comes here, and Pete Incaviglia has prior experience managing this because James Paxton went through something like this too. Basically, Kumar is doing a rehab stint with us in a sense, but it doesn't happen all the time because you don't have guys that are draft eligible signing with us. You have guys that have played professional ball signing with us.
Minor league baseball got some really bad PR from some minor leaguers in the Angel organization, claiming the living conditions were terrible. Has minor league baseball in general addressed that situation since those reports have come out?
So that isn't affiliated with us, but I do have buddies that are playing in a good friend. One of my good friends is an outfielder for the Cyclones, actually. I can tell you that it has come a long way, but it can go further. These guys should be paid like the guys like the Pete Alonsos of the world, and they should be cared that way. They shouldn't be making that. You're not going to make that sort of money. They should be treated that way, in a sense of proper food, proper housing. Not having to worry about where they're going to get their next meal or having to split rent in a 2-bedroom apartment with 8 guys. It has seemed that it has gotten better from what I understand. But luckily for us, that's not involved with us. And I know for a fact that these guys are put up in our organization, in our league, they're put up in first class amenities and taken great care of, and don't have to really worry about much. And we make their jobs easier to just show up and play, basically.
As far as the fans go, does Tri-Valley have promotions? Because minor league baseball isn't so much fun to go to. And it's so much more of an intimate feeling than going to a major league game.
Yeah, so we do a lot. We have 4,200 seats, but we could sit up to 7,000 because we have berm seating in the outfield. We have picnic areas, tents, suites, things like that. We do a lot of what'd you say? What's it called? Not appearances, promotions. So, like for example, when we come back from our road trip on on June 1st we play, or the 31st we play. We're wearing it's hockey night, so we're doing a specialty jersey for hockey night, and we partnered with the old Albany River Rats, who used to be the Devils affiliate in the AHL. So we're wearing like a short sleeve style hockey jersey for hockey night. So we do a lot of those. It's a fun time. Guys come out for it, and we do the giveaways, the bobbleheads, the things like that. But like we do plenty of like theme nights where things like that. It's awesome. It's a big fan base up there. The team's been there. They moved from Pittsfield, Massachusetts, where the Mets had their low A team 20 years ago. So like baseball's been there for a while, and in the capital region of New York, baseball has been has a rich history and a rich background.
So I have to ask, just because your coach was part of the '93 Phillies, is he still as excitable as he was on that team? I mean, that team was definitely,
Pete, it's funny you ask, because Pete, one of our last home games, he got ejected. It was in the second inning, and it was bases loaded for the other team, and Brett Boone's son was hitting for the team that we were playing against. And our pitcher deliberately came set, and he has this weird where he comes set like directly with his arms out in front of him. And they called a balk on him. And now to me, it clearly wasn't a balk. And they called it really late. So Pete came out, and Pete let him know that it wasn't a balk multiple times in some not so great language, and then got thrown out. And then once he got thrown out, Inky decided to show the umpire what a balk looks like by going onto the mound and showing him the difference between what a balk is and what a balk is not. So yeah, he still is as excitable as you think. Great guy though. Very personable. I've gotten to talk to him about like life, like not just baseball stuff. You really tell, like, you get an appreciation I'm trying to word this properly. You get an appreciation down at these levels to know that they're people just as much as they're athletes, if that makes sense. Like before this, I was working for an AHL team, the St. Louis Blues affiliate in Springfield, Massachusetts, and I'm still friends with some of the guys that play on that team. They're awesome. They're in the third round of the playoffs right now, and I talked to some of them yesterday. So it's like you get to really get the feel of guys and realize like they're not Jacob deGrom, obviously, but like that they're people too. It's not just like you see how much they genuinely have fun playing just as much as we have fun watching and getting to know the guys. They're awesome.
Yeah,
go ahead, Pags.
And I was going to say, that's why I had to ask, because that 93 team in Philadelphia is still revered here. Obviously they had a bunch of characters like Dykstra and Pete Incaviglia, and Darren Dalton was the captain of that team, and Kevin Stocker, Mickey Morandini, just Milt Thompson. That team
Mitch Williams. You've delivered
Mitch Williams, Ricky Batalico. I mean, all those guys are
Schilling.
Kurt's probably the least well liked
right now.
Yes, but I mean, literally, the one thing that you could say about that team specifically was that they were humanized. When they played, like I said, I went to the second game of the doubleheader that started at 1:00 in the morning, where in between time, the case of beer that that John Kruk was promised after every game, they drank. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
In
of
between
course.
the games.
Of
You know,
course, but
that's
their style of play, Pags, the 93 Phillies team, that hard-nosed, rugged, small ball, basically going against what baseball in 2022 is. Major League Baseball in 2022, that's how we play. I mean, we play hard. We're stealing bags. We're laying out for balls. We have the power hitters, but we play a aggressive, not in your face, but like an aggressive, tough style of baseball that is really hard to beat.
That's
so it's fun.
I think that's
it's
what
comparable, and
really
it rubs
is.
off, and it rubs off from Pete. It starts at the top. The organization loves Pete. Everywhere Pete's managed, he's had a winner, and here he expects no less. What are you going to say, Jack?
Yeah, I wasn't going to ask this, but since you're speaking about Pete, does he harbor ambitions of making it back to the big leagues as a manager?
I don't know. He managed in the Atlantic League when the team from Texas, the Sugarland Skeeters, were there, and I actually met him as a fan there. I never asked him a question like that, but I sure know that every chance he gets, it's, man, I love coaching down here. Man, I love managing down here. And he has his guys. Like, there's guys that we've signed that have played with him in all his stops as a manager, whether it's in the Atlantic League, things like that. It's kind of ironic for a guy that never played a game of minor league baseball is now managing in independent leagues and in the minors, but he loves it down here. And I mean, I don't want to speak for him. I would assume, of course, everybody wants to get to that next level, but I can say confidently that he is very comfortable where he is. He loves it. He loves it down here.
Pags and myself were talking about Joe Girardi in the beginning of the show. We've never heard of a case of a manager being sent down to the minor leagues to kind of get it together and then being brought up. That would be a first. That would be amazing.
That'd be hysterical, wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
I can't imagine that Joe would be really excited about that move.
Well,
Joe should be sent. Joe should be sent home.
I have to like Joe Girardi, but he's in Philly now, so Pags has more of a say as far as he.
No,
goes.
I'm just busting.
I'm right there with you. I am right there with you. He should be sent home.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. I mean, I'm a Met fan, so I'm enjoying life right now. I would be lying. I love Buck, but
I'll be up there on Saturday. I'm going to the game
on
Saturday, so
that's awesome. So that's kind of the comparison I draw to Pete, with his manager styling. The players hover around the skipper, hover around the manager, like the Mets do with Buck, and like they get along with them. They can joke with them. They can talk with them. But come game time, man, you're locked in. And the way Buck is, knowing the rules, Pete's incredible. I talked to him for 10 minutes, and I consider myself very intelligent when it comes to like baseball rules and knowledge and things like that. Everybody used to say, "Oh, I read comics, I watch cartoons." I read the back of baseball cards, and I read the sports pages every day. So with that knowledge I had, I talked to Pete for 10 minutes, and I felt like I had the birds flying around my head, like I was a dodo bird compared to what Pete has taught me. And that's the way he coaches. He is so smart, and he is always thinking of what's next before it happens.
Eric, just are you a 1 or 2 man booth?
One man booth.
Wow, that's got to be difficult. You've got to have a lot of stories to go on and on.
Yeah.
The game itself doesn't do it. You got to really give a lot of background.
What's nice about the one man booth, and I have a lot of not knowledge, but like a lot of things to go off of, jumping points, things like that. And with this, I have not much of a pregame show. I only go on about 10 minutes before first pitch, usually recap the game before, any talking points, things like that, where I can use a lot of my knowledge and facts and things like that, stories in game. So it seems tough, but I did it in college. So it's nothing I haven't been a part of before. Tough, but fun. I enjoy it.
Hey, you know what? Well, and we do appreciate you coming on today and teaching me. Like I said, I love hearing about that, and the fact that Pete's your coach. And now I'm going to definitely start following you guys.
And his nephew's the man too. His nephew's our third base coach, Tommy. He's the man.
Well, I tell you what, there may be a job opening in Philadelphia, so I'm gonna let the brass know in Philly that there may be a possibility to get somebody back back in, just because I like that type of thing where, when you hear about the players hanging around the manager and listening to the manager and wanting to hear some of the stories and following that's contagious, and that begets winning. And that's something that I like to hear. That shows that somebody has got the ear of the team, and the team wants to hear it, and they actually start to emulate their coach. Unlike what's happening in Philadelphia right now.
It's just so funny because, like, we've seen in the past, and Jack brought up the Ducks earlier, and we talked about the Long Island Ducks. Gary Carter was their manager for a couple of years. Like, there's guys that are
Binghamton with the Mets.
Yeah, but Gary also managed the Ducks too.
Yeah,
for like 2 years. So like you're seeing more and more big name guys like Bobby Jones,
Wally Backman,
Wally too. Yep,
yeah.
Wally. Bobby Jones, who pitched for the Mets, I believe, is the manager that's coming in against us starting Tuesday. They are all like you're starting to see more and more guys dip their hand and dip their foot in to the coaching realm and succeeding at it. I mean, look at what Gabe Kapler's done. I mean, I know he failed in Philly, but that's because he wasn't supported there. Look what he did in with the Giants, right? A guy that just said, "Hey," Dave Roberts too, guys that have worked their way up through the ranks, and that's what you're starting to see a lot more. And I think Wally and Pete, both of them, should be affiliated years ago now.
Well, hopefully, like I said, maybe there's going to be a change in Philadelphia, and I wouldn't mind them taking a look at him as a possible option. So, well, thank you very much, Eric. We got to get going to our next break here, but thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we'll get you back on again.
Not a problem.
Like you've got some stories to tell, and I'd love to hear some more about
for sure
how you guys are doing.
Thank you, guys. Jack, take care, all right?
Thanks, Eric.
Have a good one, guys. Have a good one.
Have a good one, Eric. Thank you. All right. So we're going to just do a quick commercial break. And right on the backside of that, we have Jay McLovin from Unscripted Podcast here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. So just give us a quick 90 seconds and we'll be right back.
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. Down it, crack! I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy. He missed the tag. He missed the tag.
Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help?
Mm-mm.
I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good. Makes me feel nice.
Be around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola and Sprite. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
And we are back. As you can see, some of them older commercials. I'm going to keep finding some older ones too. I like to hear that Bob Uecker one always seems to get me. He missed the tag. He missed the tag. Yeah, must be in the front row. That's an old classic. But obviously, we do have, like I said, Jay McLovin coming on the show from Unscripted. Hey, Jay, how are you today?
Good. How you fellas doing? I tell you, Pags, I wish I had a Coca-Cola to give Mean Joe. I'd do that for a jersey any day of the week.
You know, it's funny. I used to tell people that I was that kid. You know, so I actually have a Mean Joe green jersey. Of course, mine's black and not white, which, you know, the white one would have been the perfect one to have, and I could then lie much better. But when I did a TikTok about it saying, hey, I'm the kid from that Coke commercial, I had everybody in Pittsburgh up in arms thinking that I was that guy. They're like, oh, that guy's from Philly. I can't believe it. So it was kind of funny.
Was he really mean?
I love messing with the guys.
He was a great player, but was he mean in the sense that he took cheap shots, like he'd give you an extra elbow when he had you down?
Yeah.
Oh, Jack, that's how football was back then.
Yeah, well.
Listen, it's like the NBA. It's the NBA. It's kind of soft. Bill Laimbeer, come on now. The bad boys. I mean,
Bill Laimbeer's retiring from coaching in the WNBA. I mean, he was the ultimate cheap shot artist. Bill Laimbeer would try to injure you. I mean, he carried me. Yeah. I was no fan of his.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because I couldn't stand him either. That whole thing with Rick Mahorn and stuff like that, and Charles Barkley, that was a fun time in basketball. You know, watching the bad boys get beat up sometimes. You know, but obviously the Sixers couldn't take them when it came down to you know the crunch time. So that's why they got to win a couple of championships, and the Sixers only won one in 1983. But in the meantime, Jay is a Cowboys fan, and since I like to start this off, since I know that Mac is a little bit more politically correct than I am, that Dallas sucks. And, you know, what are your thoughts on this upcoming season with everything that Dallas has and has not done?
Yeah, first of all, yeah, Dallas does. We are kind of hurting right now. We didn't really upgrade at all in free agency, which kind of, you know, we lost Lyle Collins and obviously Amari Cooper. I'm not really so much upset about the Amari Cooper because I think it kind of opens it up a little bit more for CeeDee Lamb. The big question is how is Gallup going to come back after that ACL? And if he can come back and play well, then we're going to be okay. But yeah, I mean, we lost Gregory on the defensive side of the ball. And then of course, obviously Collins and McGovern, we lost off the offensive line. They did pick up Tyler Smith, the offensive tackle out of Tulsa. And then we got Matt Waletsko, I think is how you say his last name, out of North Dakota. But these are guys that are projects. They're not really, in my opinion, ready to go. It's going to take a little bit of development on their part with the Cowboys. So I don't know, man. You know, and then we got Tyron Smith, who's got lower back problems right now. So I don't know how he's going to look. They're being cautious with him. So clearly our offensive line, you know, is not looking the best. So, and obviously, you know, not that I like Philly because I detest Philly. I pretty much detest anybody that's not Dallas, but it's okay. And I'm pretty sure Pags will say the same thing, being a Phillies guy. But yeah, man, Philly did a lot of good things, man. You know, you brought in Brown, you brought in or you got Davis out of the draft. I mean, you guys got a lot of good things working over these. I'll tell you, I got to be honest with you, Pags. This is Hurts make or break, in my opinion. He's got a running game. He's got a running game. He's got all the weapons. I mean, They've upgraded their defense. I mean, honestly, I got to be honest. If I'm being honest with myself and being unbiased about, my Cowboys and everything, this really should be the Eagles here. Given all the upgrades that they've done and the fact that we didn't really, upgrade where we should have. I think the one guy in the draft that I thought the Cowboys actually got a good grade on was Jalen Tolbert out of South Alabama. He's got good vertical speed. He just needs to work a little bit on his separation and watching the ball all the way into the breadbasket. But the guy's got a lot of good upside, and so that's the one. And he's a workaholic. He's always the last guy off the field. He's doing a lot of extra practicing. So I don't know, man. I think that might be the one bright spot. I think he's going to be the third wide receiver behind Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, and then obviously they lost Wilson, who was their wide receiver 3. So I think him coming in, and if he can slide into that role, we're going to be okay that direction. But, yeah, man, I don't know, man. Philly's looking pretty good right now, aren't they?
Well, the Eagles are making they made all these moves, and I was a bit surprised that the Cowboys basically stood pat. As far as NFL moves go, every team has to make moves because of the cap one way or the other. But the Cowboys were strangely quiet. If anything, the perception is they've taken a step backwards, being 12-5 last year, and they're going to be hard-pressed to match that record. You might be looking at a 10-7 team, and maybe that'll even be good enough to win the division. Who knows how much better the Eagles are actually going to be despite all their moves. But the Eagles should be better. And actually, who would have thought 1 year ago, if we were saying 1 year later now, the Eagles would actually be favored to win that division?
Yeah, and again, and I'm pretty sure Pags will agree with you, the rise and fall of the Eagles falls on Jalen Hurts. But again, let's not forget that the Eagles were the wild card team under Jalen Hurts without Brown and those upgrades. So, it would be weird if they don't have to win the division. I think, like I said, with the upgrades that they've given around him, and if he can make the wild card with him based on last year's team, and again with the decline of the Cowboys not really upgrading, matter of fact, we've lost a little bit. They did bring in Sam Williams, the outside linebacker out of Ole Miss, who he is a good run blocker. He can also accelerate to get to the quarterback to go along Micah Parsons. Supposedly under Dan Quinn, they brought Sam Williams in to kind of be the replacement for Randy Gregory because he could play on the end or at the outside linebacker spot. So we'll see how that translates and if it actually is what it is. But, yeah, I think it's going to be I tell you, the NFC East used to be the joke. Now they're starting to get a little bit more competitive, obviously with Washington bringing in Carson Wentz and what they're doing over there. And giving a little bit more help. And obviously we got to see what Chase Young looks like coming back off that injury. And then, of course, the Giants are getting a little bit better. They had a couple of good draft picks, I thought, in the draft. So everybody is getting a little bit better. I think Dable is going to do a lot of good things over there with the New York Giants. Not that I like the New York Giants. I hate them as much as I hate the Eagles and the Commanders. But, yeah, I think the NFC East is getting a little bit tougher. And I think that it'll continue to get a little bit tougher. But I think right now it's still going to come down to the Cowboys and Eagles in terms of this division.
For the Cowboys to contend for a Super Bowl title, does Dak Prescott absolutely have to play like a top 5 quarterback? And is he he
definitely needs to play like –
is he a top 10 quarterback even, realistically, if you look around the whole NFL?
Well, I'll tell you, man, for the money that they gave him, he's got to start playing like it. I mean, great. And I don't want to overlook – you can't overlook what Dak did. If you look at Dak in the regular season, he's got, almost 5,000 yards. I mean, the guy in the regular season was – the problem with Dak is once he gets out of the regular season and into the playoffs, much like a James Harden, he just kind of – he doesn't play like he did in the regular season. And I don't know if that's a play calling issue coming out of Mike McCarthy, which I tell you, I'm still not a fan of Mike McCarthy. I love Dan Quinn on defense, and I do like the offensive coordinator that we have. But I'm not a big fan of McCarthy. I would have much rather seen. I mean, if we could have brought a Brian Flores in, Jesus, man, Lord. I mean, and that's the thing about Jerry. Jerry has to have Jerry-like people around him, and that's the only thing if you ask me what the real weakness on the Cowboys is, it's not the players, it's the ownership, man. It just always has been because Jerry Jones wants a specific type of coach, and that really is the hindrance to our team. And I've said that for years, that, the Cowboys got lucky that we got our champions just because they brought in Jimmy Johnson. And Jimmy Johnson really, with the Herschel Walker trade, really brought in a lot of good players off of that trade. And that's what got them those championships. And that was just, I hate to say it, man, but it was a little bit, almost a little bit of a luck on their end on the way they drafted and some of the free agents they got. But Jimmy Johnson really did that for them. And when Jerry and Jimmy couldn't get along and then he was gone, that's really when we saw what Jerry Jones, true ownership was like. Because if you look at all the head coaches after that, I mean, they're all horrible. The only one I would say that was actually pretty good was Wade Wilson.
What about Bill Parcells? He took him to the playoffs.
Yeah, but again, when you have Bill Parcells, not that I don't have anything against Bill Parcells, but I think he's a little outdated as a coach. But given today's that particular NFL, and again, Jerry doesn't always give Bill what Bill needed. There's a lot of issues with Jerry.
I think Jerry Jones gets knocked a little too much. I know you disagree, Jay, but when you compare what he's accomplished, he's actually the GM. But look at the Cowboys' overall success. I know they haven't been back to a Super Bowl, but they really haven't been that bad. I mean, compare them at the current time to Giant ownership in Washington. I mean, the Cowboys they're pretty relevant. They were 12-5 last year. With a little luck, they would have beaten the 49ers. Then they would have gone on to face the Packers. Who knows, how far they could have taken it had they gotten by. They lost to a good 49er team in the playoffs, and they lost a very tight game that was a winnable game.
I always said when you have a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo, man. And let's be honest, Jimmy Garoppolo sucks, in my opinion. The only reason the 49ers got where the 49ers got to was because of Deebo Samuel and the other running back. I can't remember his last name, but Mitchell, I think it was. Am I right? The other who was the running back?
Special teams beat the Packers in the playoff game.
But it was a defense of the 49ers and Deebo Samuel and the gadget plays that he did that got him. Because let's be honest. A lot of Garoppolo, if you look at his overall, not that Garoppolo's bad, but he's a game manager. He makes a lot of, silly mistakes, but that team around him really covers up a lot of Garoppolo's issues. And I think you kind of saw it once they got to when they played the Rams.
But you make a great point. So Dak Prescott, he's got to be a game changer, and Jalen Hurts has to be a game manager. That's the difference, I think, between the two teams who are going to contend.
Yeah.
For the NFC East, because Jalen Hurts isn't going to be a game changer. If he could manage the team well, that's all they need. But Dak Prescott can't just manage the offense for the Cowboys. He's got to play like a real star.
And again, that kind of falls on Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, not put enough motion in our offense. Our offense was very, very predictable at times because we did not use motion. And I think that's really what hurt them. I think we had more motion in there. I think, keeping them off guard and not letting them, kind of be more predictable. I think that's kind of what hurt the Cowboys as well. I don't think I'm running that ball. I'm not running that ball against the 49ers at the very end of the game. I'm throwing it because it's too far to go just trying to run it. And there are too many issues that can happen. And obviously you saw that.
Is there threat on Ezekiel Elliott's tires still or what? Is he declining?
You said what now? Oh, Elliott?
Ezekiel Elliott, yeah.
Man. Well, so he played last year, and I didn't realize this, but he had a torn PCL last year in his knee. It wasn't really discovered, and I think he kind of played through it. And I guess now what they're saying from the reports that I've read on Ezekiel is that the ligament he didn't have surgery on it, so I guess it has naturally healed itself. But I don't know, man. With Zeke, I think having the knee injury, I don't know if he was playing fully 100%, but his burst of speed, he's a north-south kind of guy. And again, that offensive line was kind of banged up. You put Pollard in there. Pollard's a little bit more elusive. Pollard got you a little bit more yards than Zeke did, but Pollard's not an every down back either. So, and again, that's the problem I have too with the Cowboys is the fact that you give $100 million to Cooper, you give $100 million to Zeke, you give all these big $100 million contracts to three guys which eats up a lot of your cap. And then, of course, Cooper now is over with the Browns. But that's why I think we don't see a lot of offseason moves with the Cowboys, because honestly, they are kind of cap strapped for cash, and it's hard to compete when you're cap strapped to bring in free agents.
Yeah, and I asked this to other Cowboys fans, and I'll ask you just before we switch over and transition over to basketball before we get you out of here. I mentioned during the draft, would you have accepted a third-round pick for Zeke Elliott to trade him?
That's a hard question, Pags.
All right, then let me make it harder for you. Would you have accepted a second-round pick?
Yeah, I think you know what? If they're willing to take on Zeke's cap so I can get some cap space, yeah, I think I would have, because at that particular time, you have Mostert out there. I think there was like 2 or 3 other running backs that were out there that now are actually on Miami's squad. Chase Edmonds was out there. I think I find somebody else at a bargain basement price, and I can stick them in that lineup, and I think we're good to go. Especially, like I said, with the production that Zeke has given us in the last year or two. Yeah, you give me a second rounder, you take that cap off my hands, and yeah, we got a deal. And then I'm gonna go out and get me another running back.
I think that's what the NFL has become, guys. You draft someone, they play a few years for them, and then when they're ready for the big contract, you move on from them, and then you draft again. I mean, it's like a merry-go-round. The NFL is going to have to address that at some point.
Well, and I will tell you that you were the only one to trade Zeke Elliott away. Out of the 7 people that I've spoken to, you were the only one to say, yes, I would accept a second-round pick. Sounds like you wouldn't have accepted a third. But you
I still think Zeke has a little bit more value than that. But I'm like I said, I'm also a realist, man. And Zeke he's not the same. Look, in my opinion, running backs only really have about 6, 7. If you really take care of yourself and are fortunate enough, maybe you get 8 good prime years out of a running back. And Zeke right now I think he's like in year 5, 4 or 5. So I really only look at Zeke as maybe 3, maybe 4 years of prime left. And that's, like I said, he's had injuries. He just had a PC. Man, I think it's time to move on. I'm a realistic person. I think it's time to go, find somebody else at a cheaper price. And if I can get a second-round pick and maybe score a running back out of that, okay, we're good.
Jay, you don't seem to feel the Cowboys are knocking on the door of getting to the Super Bowl, because if you felt they were, I get the feeling you wouldn't say move on from Zeke. You'd say let's ride him a little more.
No, I think I would still say that. Like I said, I'm a realistic person, man. And sometimes you got to strike while the iron is hot. And if you look at Zeke's past production, it's not exactly that great. And I don't see him getting better because he's mortal. And as you get older, you're going to decline, especially with injuries. So I don't necessarily believe that. And yes, you're right. I mean, do I think the Cowboys are super? No, I don't. So I am probably looking for more bargain basement prices so I can come back in free agency maybe the following year and retool up a little bit and then try to make another push.
Well, I would say good luck, but I wouldn't mean it.
I know you would, Pax. That's why I respect you.
But that being said, to segue over to the NBA, while we got a few more minutes left, it looks like Boston has got a really good command of the series now after winning in Miami last night. They take a 3-2 lead. I think they won by like 13 points. It was actually a lower scoring game, 93-80. I'm actually specifically, if I could, speak selfishly, I'm happy that the Sixers lost to the Heat, because I don't know that I would have been able to handle them getting spanked by Boston, and I feel like they would have. I feel like that Boston could have swept them or, won it in 5 games. So the fact that, we don't have that opportunity makes me feel good. Do you have any thoughts on what's going on during that series, and then even or in the other series where it kind of looks like Dallas is cooked? Even though they won that last game, I still think Dallas is cooked.
Yeah, again, I'll make the Dallas series real short. I'll start with that first just because it's a short segment on that one. With Dallas, I've said this all along. Dallas did well in Phoenix. And and a lot of people had them written off. I had them written off, honestly. They did better than what I expected them to do. But with Dallas, going against Golden State and all the championship caliber level players that they have, and the fact that they're riding the momentum right now and they're all healthy. The thing about Golden State is everybody from Dallas has to show up. You can't have players taking nights off. And Powell and Kleber are, in my opinion, the Achilles heel of Dallas, because they don't really give you a whole lot down low in the paint. Powell specifically, I think matter of fact, they've actually limited his minutes. You're seeing Kleber now more than anything. And so the fact that Dallas is struggling down in the low post is forcing them to shoot up more three-point shots. And obviously there's three-point shots. If they're not falling, well, then you're going to fall too. And that's where I think Golden State has them right now, because Golden State does have a low post, and they also have obviously incredible outside shooting. And I think that's kind of what's hurting Dallas right now. And Brunson, he's a lot of times he'll come on and sometimes he won't. He's a little bit inconsistent there. So Dallas really needs that good 1-2 punch. And I think, Luka's doing about as good as Luka can do. But the fact that, the inconsistent play of all the other players around him between Finney-Smith and Dinwiddie, that's really what's hurting them. But it's really the low post or lack thereof that's killing Dallas in this series. And I fully expect them to basically end it on the next game. In terms of Miami and the Celtics, if you watch that first half, it wasn't looking too good. There was moderate. And then that second half rolls around, and then that's when you start to see Jaylen Brown kind of emerge. And Al Horford kind of comes around, and, it was a tale of two tapes, and, Philly came out with that one. The problem, again, with Miami is, Adebayo is so damn inconsistent at the low post that's really what kind of kills them as well. And let's be honest, Adebayo is almost a forward, not really a true center, so he can't handle the weight of an Embiid or a bigger man, or even like a Tice or a Robert Williams, and they put that weight on him, and he just, it's hard for him to sustain the low post. And I think that's why we see that in them. And so for that reason, Spoelstra, God bless you, for some undrafted players and basically a team of a bunch of number twos and not really having a low post, you're really, you have squeezed all the lemonade out of that lemon that you possibly can. And you got the most out of this team that you could. But at the end of the day, they're going to fall short of the Celtics, because the Celtics are deep and they have a lot of really good talent on that. And Marcus Smart, your defensive guy, your defensive specialist. Then you got Horford, who's a junkyard dog. And then you got Tatum and Brown, your 1-2 punches. I mean, it's just amazing. And then you got Grant Williams, who, obviously had an off night last night, but typically, the guy's lights out at the 3-point range. So just amazing.
So, all right, real quick, because we only got another minute and a half left before we got to get out of here. So it sounds to me like you think it's going to be the Celtics and the Warriors.
Absolutely.
Predictions on who wins that
it's going to be Celtics Warriors, no doubt about it. And I just think the Warriors, with their experience level, the depth of the Warriors team and so forth, it's going to be Warriors. The Warriors are going to come out again.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, that they're playing too strong right now. And that's, that I think ultimately that's what's going to stop the Celtics. Some team that can hit 3-pointers at will right now, because they haven't played, like even Milwaukee wasn't able to do it. You can see that the Heat's not able to do it. Jimmy Buckets can only do so much. So ultimately,
you guys are making bold predictions. Come on. I mean, Golden State's up 3-1. Of course, they're going to pick them to go to the finals, and Celtics up 3-2. I'd love for you guys to say, yeah, I think.
Well, that's why I was asking the prediction for next series.
Finals. Now, that would have been news.
Yeah, well, no hot takes here. I think the NBA has kind of already figured out what's going to happen.
But I would say something, Jay, because Pags is always vents about the Sixers. The good news is if the Celtics win the NBA championship, they're basically doing it with the same team that got eliminated 4-1 against the Nets in the playoffs last year, meaning the Sixers could come back with the same team and maybe replicate what the Celtics would have done this year if they do go on to win the NBA.
Not with James Harden, they're not. No offense, but not. Listen, I had James Harden for a hot minute in Houston. I'm very familiar with James Harden, and no offense, you got Daryl Morey over there, and he's a big time Harden guy. And I'm sorry, as long as Harden's on that team, hell no. You might be okay in the regular season, but playoff Harden,
Hey, and on that note, we're going to say goodbye to Jay.
Hey, listen,
Jay.
look at where my Rockets are, okay? We're dead last and we're rebuild mode, so I'm just being realistic.
Hey, well,
I
you gotta
agree
love
with Jay,
somebody. You gotta
actually.
love
Max,
somebody.
I agree
You're
with Jay,
stuck with
so I'm
Houston.
done. Yeah, I agree with Jay.
Well, Jay, I appreciate you coming on. Well, we're going to have to get out of
Thank
here
you for
because
having
we're
me,
running
brother.
close to our 2 hours, and I'm sure Mac will be having you back on here sooner than later. So thank you very much for coming on tonight.
Jack,
And,
a pleasure. Philly sports guy. You know I love you, man. You guys are awesome. Thank you for having me.
Good stuff.
I appreciate
Jay.
it.
Thanks.
And we're just going to take it right on out because we're about at the end of our time. So until tomorrow, thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you then. Take care.